Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Quest Connect. My name's Allison Boyle, one of the facilitators at Quest for Life, and it's my pleasure to welcome you. If this is your first time joining us, welcome, welcome. And if you're familiar, welcome back. And obviously, welcome to those who may choose to join later and watch at your leisure. So today we're going to explore 4 habits that can influence brain health. Yes, we're focusing today on some research relating to brain health, but healthy brains are healthy hearts, healthy bodies, and I think this is just really good information for our general well-being. So that's the territory that we're going to be exploring today, and we're going to be focusing for these 4 habits. We're going to be looking at some research done by Rudolph Tansey. And Rudolph Tansey is the director of genetics and aging at Massachusetts General Hospital. So we'll be drawn largely on his work, but I'm going to weave in other aspects and other research too that might be helpful. So whenever anyone joins, if someone could just make a little post and tell me that you can hear me and that you can see me, that would be fantastic. And in the meantime, why don't we start by just taking a moment to drop everything that we've been doing and just come to our senses. This little practice is a great way just to bring ourselves back to the present moment. And we do that by literally going through the senses of the body: taste, touch, sight, smell, sound. And it's a really great anchor because our body's always in the present moment. Whereas our minds, if you're anything like me, your mind's always racing into the future, what if, or planning, what you've got to do next, or rehashing what's just gone before. So let's just take a moment to settle ourselves. You don't have to change anything, but perhaps you can just start by taking 3 conscious breaths. That's great. Hi, Wendy. Hi, Sharon. That's lovely. It's good to know you can hear me and see me. If you feel comfortable to do so, you may want to close your eyes. If not, just lower your gaze. Maybe there could be a sigh behind one of those breaths, just a bit of a longer exhalation. And then start just by connecting with your sense of touch. Your bottom on the seat, feeling anything that's supporting you. Chair, cushion, floor beneath your feet. Anything that your hands are touching. Then shift your awareness to anything you can taste or sensations in the mouth. The mouth can be a field of sensation. Notice any aromas that are in the air. And anything you can see, even if your eyes are closed. Light, dark, squiggles, colour. Just noticing what's there. Now shift your awareness to anything you can hear. Sounds that are close by. perhaps in the room that you're sitting. And sounds that are further afield. Background noise. Any noise from outside. Just let the sound come to you and then let it pass. Not even needing to label it, just registering it as sound. And then come back to your breath. Again, maybe just 3 conscious breaths. And when you're ready, just bring yourself back into the room. And just take a moment to notice how you feel after doing that little practice. It doesn't have to be anything in particular, just notice if anything's different. Now I had some headphones on and I've just taken them off, so I hope that hasn't affected the sound, but I found that I could, the headphones must be very tight because I could hardly hear myself. So I've taken them out, but if I get some background noise, I might just put them in and you can let me know that if that's a problem. Okay, so let's get started. I'm excited about this. I'm always excited about new information that might relate to well-being. And I've got a lot of information. So I've actually got some notes today. In fact, I've got quite a lot of notes here. So if at times you see me looking down and I kind of lose a bit of connection with you, I'm just referring to my notes to keep me on track. And also I've got some, facts and figures. So I might need to refer to that from time to time. So let's see how we go. So again, this is largely drawing on the work of Rudolph Tansey. And he's talking about these 4 habits that influence brain health. And he's talking about them a little bit kind of in the negative. So I'll refer to it in the negative. But then importantly, we're going to talk about what can we do about it. And the good news about this is that these are things we can change. These are things we have influence over. So I'll tell you what they are, and then I'll go through them in detail. Too much sitting. Lack of socializing, inadequate sleep, and chronic stress. I'm guessing that this probably isn't a great surprise to you, but as I say, the good news is we have influence. So I would encourage you not to hear any of this as a list of shoulds, okay? Just take it in as information, and then sure, you might want to reflect on some changes that you want to make. You get to choose. That's the important piece. So sitting, turns out that the average adult sits for a whopping 6.5 hours a day. Now I thought, oh, this can't be true. This can't possibly be true for me. I'm known as quite an active person. I went for a bushwalk yesterday and I walked for 20 kilometers and it took me 7.5 hours, But then when I reflected on the rest of my week, because of work I was doing, I was sitting at work for 5 hours. 5 hours. I certainly walked for an hour each morning, but I was still sitting solidly for 5 hours. And then I imagine after dinner, I probably sat for another hour and a half watching a little bit of telly. There's your 6.5 hours easy. I was shocked by that. So some research that was done in 2018 found that sitting too much is linked to changes in the medial temporal lobe of the brain. And this is a region that's involved in memory, and in particular making new memories. And those who sat the longest had thinning in that area of the brain, and that can be a precursor to cognitive decline and dementia. As well as that, too much sitting is also associated with other risks. Type 2 diabetes by 40%, and that is a known risk factor for developing Alzheimer's disease. Cardiovascular disease by 35%, falls, dementia, joint and back pain, and even some cancers. So lack of movement also affects mood, and so the risk of depression is actually increased by 30%. So this is quite significant. And in fact, some other research that was done it was an analysis of 15 different research articles, revealed that, and this is around the world, revealed that after researching 191,000 people, it revealed that compared with people who didn't exercise, people who racked up 75 minutes per week of moderate intensity exercise, such as brisk walking, had an 18% lower risk for depression. But the benefits got even stronger for those who accumulated about 2.5 hours of moderate intensity exercise over a week period. They had a 25% reduction for the risk of depression. So that's really significant. And actually, if you think about it, this is only about 10 to 20 minutes brisk walking per day. You know, that's not too bad. So if you think about the recommendation for exercise is about 30 minutes a day, doing this, would improve our mood, memory, and general well-being. And I want to add, especially when it's done with others. And we'll talk in a moment about the benefits of connection. And what about if it was done with others and then it was done in nature as well? Then we're adding, because we know that being in nature reduces stress. So you might be thinking about how you kind of measure up in relation to that. Sometimes I like to say, don't think about it as exercise, just think about it as movement. And what would be the best type of movement for you? Well, whatever you'll do, basically, is there something that you actually enjoy so that you can do it consistently? Because consistency is actually much more important. Yes, I might go on a 20-kilometer bushwalk once a week, but if I'm not doing anything else, every day, then the benefits aren't really, it might sound good, but the benefits aren't really so great. So consistency is the key rather than volume. And it has to be something that cooperates with your body. You may need to discuss this with your doctor, your exercise physiologist, to get some recommendations, but get moving and get moving regularly. 30 minutes a day might be all that it takes. Maybe you set a timer on your phone as a reminder. Even things like walking around the house a little bit more, making every day activities more active, taking the stairs or walking up the escalator rather than standing on the escalator, park the car a bit further away, walk instead of taking the bus, get stuck into household chores, gardening, playing with the kids. If you're a little bit older and a little bit more frail, then can you commit to trying to just walk around the house a little bit more? Can you walk to the front gate, to the end of the street? Could you engage in some seated movement? Just get the body moving is the key. And aside from Dr. Tansey's work, Dementia Australia's campaign, Eat, Play and Rest, also emphasises that, diet matters too, as well as movement. And obviously combining physical movement along with cognitive activity and a healthy diet is the way to go. That's the recommendation. And what is a healthy diet? Well, that's one that's rich in fibre, whole grains, fresh fruit, as we'll see, particularly berries, and vegetables. Good, unsaturated fats and omega-3 fatty acids. And these dietary components turn the dial down on inflammation, which can damage our tissues, our joints, our artery walls, and our organs. So limit processed foods, sweets, and anything else that's highly refined. High blood sugar is linked to the development of diabetes, which we've talked about, obesity, heart disease, and anything that affects our heart or anything that affects blood flow to the brain. Obviously, that is going to be compromising our brain health and may contribute, to dementia. So there's a really great book called Grain Brain, and it's written by a Dr. Perlmutter. He's a neurologist, but he's also a nutritionist. And I don't imagine there's too many neurologists who are also nutritionists. And he talks about 7 foods to include for brain health. Salmon, which is rich in healthy omega-3 fatty acids. Has to be wild caught though. This is because it reduces inflammation, decreases the risk of depression and cognitive impairment. It also contains vitamin B12 and other essential nutrients. Second one is blueberries, because blueberries contain antioxidants that have been shown to reduce the risk of cognitive decline and can reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes, again, which has a major risk for developing Alzheimer's disease. Green leafy vegetables. Brain healthy, they include brain healthy vitamins and minerals. Things like cabbage, kale, broccoli protect gut health, again, by reducing inflammation in the bowel lining. And inflammation is, Dr. Perlmutter says, enemy number 1 when it comes to brain health. Avocados. They contain folate, which is necessary for making neurotransmitters. Avocado is rich in monounsaturated fats, which have been shown to facilitate healthy blood flow. So we really need healthy blood flow to the brain to deliver oxygen to the brain and keep our brains healthy. Fermented foods such as kimchi, kefir, sauerkraut, they're full of enzymes and probiotics important for digestion and gut health. These fermented foods also seem to be important and contribute to our immune function as well. And then there's prebiotic foods, and they're foods that are rich in fiber, and they feed our healthy, good gut bacteria, which play a major role in brain health. So that's things like chicory root, Jerusalem artichokes, garlic, onions, and I believe, it's not written in my notes here, but I believe chickpeas too. Nuts, this is number 7. They contain an abundance of healthy fats and proteins and have also been shown to protect brain health, improve cognitive performance, and age-related decline. So there's 7 examples of brain healthy food that are not so difficult to include. So rather than it being about elimination, sure, we want to cut down on sugars and all of that, but really maybe think about it, are the things that we can just add in, and they're quite easy to add in, really. I've certainly found, since I've started consuming more nuts, that I am craving less sugar, like chocolate. So I don't know if that's just me, but it's certainly easy to include some of these foods. And let's not forget the microbiome. That microbiome is the community of gut microorganisms. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that regulates sleep, appetite, mood, and 95% of serotonin is produced in the gut by gut bacteria. So, it's all connected, it's all interrelated. What we eat affects our brain, it's all related. We also, of course, if you're a regular, know that we talk about at Quest, we just talk about slow food, seasonal, local, organic where possible, whole foods. And if you remember that and incorporate that into your diet, let's face it, you're doing pretty well. So moving on to number 2 of the habits that Rudolph Tansey talks about is lack of socializing. And he tells us that loneliness is linked to depression. I mean, there are loads of studies around that now. In fact, in the UK, they actually have a minister for loneliness because it creates such an impact on our general health because there's a higher risk of Alzheimer's and cognitive decline. And a July 2021 recent study in the Journal of Gerontology found that less socially active people lose more of the brain's grey matter, the outer layer that processes information. So it's really important to stay socially connected. In Australia, we have a social researcher called Hugh McKay, and he talks about social connectedness as a pathway to well-being and happiness, because people who are lonely and isolated, they have increased inflammation, weaker immune systems, difficulty sleeping. If you feel socially excluded, even if you have a perception of that, or if you're socially excluded, it lights up the same regions of the brain as pain does. We experience social exclusion, intentional or not, as painful. And data suggests losing sociality, especially things like satisfaction in marital relationships, is associated with increased loneliness. And there was an interesting study in the early days of COVID, and this was done in Australia by YouGov, and they found that 77% of people reported feeling stressed at not seeing family. 71% felt very stressed about not seeing friends, compared to 49% who felt stressed at the possibility of losing their job. So we all talked about the drama and the stress of people losing work and losing income during COVID, but actually people were rating it over 30% more stressful to be isolated and not see friends and family. So at Quest, during another diversion, we often talk about this sense of connection as part of the essential teachings at Quest. We call the 4 C's. And this sense of connection relates to how we connect to ourselves and how we connect to others, who we share life with, our loved ones, our friends, our pets, our interest groups. And it can be useful to think about the quality of those connections. Can we first of all be present with ourselves, then with others, rather than feeling the need to distract ourselves? And who do you have in your life that you can be truly present with, that you can be authentic with, and who's really there for you, and you feel as though there's a connection when you're with that person? Equally, are there other people that are a little bit more draining when you're with them? Like, it's really possible to feel, we talk about feeling lonely in a crowd, but I think it's also really possible to feel lonely, a sense of loneliness, if you're with someone that is really not connecting with you and who's kind of taken up all the oxygen in the room, and so you gradually can feel as though you don't exist for that person. I think that's a particular type of pain, and I think that's a particular type of loneliness in a way. God, they don't even see me, they're not even attempting to get me or ask me any questions or anything. Like, I feel as though I'm invisible, even though I'm in the presence of someone else. So where do you experience your sense of belonging? Your place, or maybe being with your tribe. These might not be your family, It may be people who you connect with through an activity. For me, that's my bushwalking buddies, you know. It could be for my husband, stuff life-saving. It could be the people in your yoga class or your dance class or when you're doing art or your meditation group, whatever it might be. And of course, connections are interrelated. You know, you might start off doing the yoga class to practice mindful movement to help you connect with your body, but you start to enjoy the relaxation at the end, which is deeply connecting with yourself. That might quieten the mind. Then maybe over time you start to develop a connection with others in the class. Just a social connection, or maybe the odd time there's a deep personal connection that can develop too. So start by noticing opportunities for connection. And again, Hugh McKay talks about these opportunities that exist just in our neighbourhood. How we can just notice people in the street, be friendly towards others, just being, I talk about, you know, being mindful of the person that makes my coffee in the morning, just making a connection. So I just want to take maybe a breath. We've gone through the first two, we've got two to go, and I'm just wondering how you're hearing this, how you're relating to this. And I noticed that, songs written, walking to the front gate, love it. That's right. It doesn't have to be big. Start small, but doing it regularly is the key. So feel free to post any little insights or any ideas that you have. You know, that would be great. So moving on to the third habit that Rudolph Tansey talks about is a really important one that we talk a lot about at Quest, and that's inadequate sleep. Apparently 1/3 of adults don't get the recommended 7.5 to 8 hours, 9 hours sleep a night. And research in December 2018 in the issue of sleep found that cognitive skills such as memory, reasoning, problem solving decline when people sleep fewer than the recommended 7.5 hours a night. Insomnia also impacts negatively on mood and emotion. I mean, you know this, don't you? If you have a couple of, even one really bad night's sleep or a couple of bad nights' sleep, we feel grumpy, we're not refreshed, we can experience brain fog, it's hard to concentrate, and we can feel a little bit more, we take things more personally, and we can certainly be a little bit more reactive and a bit more grumpy. But of course, the other thing is, anxiety and sleep deprivation can be self-reinforcing. Worry, and we'll talk about chronic stress in a minute, but worry, causes poor sleep. That contributes to greater anxiety overall and therefore further sleep difficulties. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some tips for a good night's sleep, and certainly previous episodes of At Home with Quest, I've talked about this a couple of times. But Quest have developed an online program that relates to sleep. And so if you're having some sleep difficulties, I'd really encourage you to check out our newly formed online self-paced programs, very reasonably priced, and you'll get lots of good information there. But just some quick tips. Maintain a sleep schedule that allows for about 7 to 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep a night, and be consistent. Go to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time, even on weekends. This helps to set the body's circadian rhythms. The suggestion is to stop caffeine by 2 p.m. because the half-life of caffeine is around 6 to 8 hours. So you don't want that kicking in just as you go to bed. So if you're planning to go to bed at 10 o'clock, You know, that 2 o'clock cup of coffee still has about 50 milligrams of caffeine in your system at 10 p.m. Avoid alcohol within 3 hours of bedtime. The reason for that is that it can affect the quality of your sleep. Alcohol doesn't allow you to get down to those deeper levels of sleep early, which happens earlier in the sleep cycle. And obviously, just being aware of how much alcohol that you drink as well. Exercise regularly. We've talked about exercise, but you know, do it earlier in the day if possible, rather than just before you go to bed, because it's going to waken you up, but it's also going to get your metabolism moving, which is one of the fantastic things about exercise, but you don't want that happening just before you go to bed. So yeah, try and exercise about 4 hours before bedtime. Get some natural sunlight first thing in the morning when you're waking up. Sunlight stops the release of melatonin, and this helps the brain to wake up and get back into that natural circadian rhythm, that natural sleep-wake cycle. Cool your room before bedtime to somewhere between 18 and about 23 degrees at night, because your body actually, your core body temperature actually has to drop a bit in order for you to get off to sleep. So that's a signal to your brain that it's time to sleep. So sleeping cooler in the evening, creating that environment helps you get to sleep more quickly, more easily, and may actually prevent you from waking up. Sometimes I think we may waken up, especially because we live in a warm country, sometimes we may waken up actually because we've got a bit too hot. We might not register that, but what we start to register is the mind racing. So we're thinking, oh, you know, these thoughts have woken me up, but actually it might just be that we've got a bit too hot. So make sure you've got plenty fresh air in the room. And then avoid blue light at night time. That's the blue light that's emitted by our cell phones, by our laptops, our iPads, because that again interferes with the production of melatonin. It switches it off. We want melatonin to increase at night time. That's the vampire hormone that helps regulate, you know, night time for sleep. So we want that to be raised at night time, but the blue light of our devices switches that off. Do meditation practice before bedtime. We have a beautiful meditation that is called Tranquil Night at Quest, and that's available online. And we always say that no one's ever got to the end of that, but there's loads of meditations out there that you can do. Get tested for sleep apnea or any other sleep, you know, that could be a medical reason. So people with sleep apnea have a higher rate instance of depression, anxiety, panic disorder. And if, you know, because of sleep apnea, if you're not getting enough oxygen to your brain, clearly that's not going to be good for brain health. And obviously ask your doctor or your naturopath about any particular substances and supplements that may be helpful. Sleeping tablets are useful in the short term, but really it has to be really short term, because they also prevent you from getting to deeper levels of sleep. They're really good for getting you off to sleep, but not necessarily for staying asleep. So it's a short-term kind of intervention. And if you do get any supplements or herbs from your naturopath, make sure that you discuss that with your doctor, just in case they're interfering with any other medication that you could be on, or any other medical condition that you may have. So just check that out, obviously. Okay, so we've dealt with sleep, adequate sleep, and we're not like in sleep. I'm really interested in sleep because it's still a bit of a mystery. There's lots of things we don't know about sleep. But one of the other things that we're doing when we sleep is we're kind of processing the day, we're processing emotions, and we're filing away things into longer term memory. And of course, that's good for our brain health too. So adequate sleep I think it's one of the key pillars just for general health. So let's go to number 4, back to Dr. Tansey and his habits. And he talks about chronic stress. No surprises here, really. Chronic stress can kill brain cells and shrink the prefrontal cortex. And this is the area responsible for memory and for learning. A major stress trigger he talks about for older adults is a kind of mindset, a my way or the highway approach. Now, this mindset may be part of someone's makeup, like, they've always been like that. But I also tend to think sometimes as we get a bit older, there is that thing how we talk about getting a bit set in our ways. We kind of like routine. And maybe there are some changes in our brain that happen, and maybe we do get a little bit more rigid, let's say, a little bit more kind of black and white. So he's really cautioning against this. And maybe the high expectation of this mindset can trigger negative reactions that raise stress levels whenever things don't go your way. Okay. I know I can experience this now, that you have a set idea about something, and then when it doesn't happen, or when other people don't fall into line, that can feel quite stressful, feel quite out of control. And then we add to it, why can't other people think like me? Because this way was definitely the right way, we can get in that righteous indignation. So flexibility is the key. When you sense that you're about to get upset, or when you're getting caught in the grip of that rigidity that I think we're all familiar with, when we sense that we're getting caught up in that, can we take some breaths? Can we find a way to just, get a bit of distance? I often find that even physically taking a step back and trying to view something in a greater perspective can help. Asking some questions like, how much does this really matter? Does it really have to be done this way? Is my way the right way? Is it possible that someone else may also have a brilliant idea? What would it cost me to let go of this? And sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not. But asking yourself those questions obviously increases that sense of flexibility in the brain. And even if it doesn't work out exactly as you wanted it to, most of the time, probably that's okay too. And we can calm ourselves by reminding ourselves of, I'm all right now. Right now, in this moment, I actually do have everything that I need. Even if not everything is going my way, even if it didn't turn out exactly as I thought, I'm all right now. And if you're regulars at Quest, if you listen in, or if you've been to a program, you'll know that we talk about this as quite foundational. The difference between reacting and responding. Staying responsive, which is what we're talking about, having perspective, being more flexible, means continuing to engage that thinking part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain that can problem solve, weigh up options. And that part of the brain is the place that helps us be aware that we're having a reaction, or we're about to have a reaction. And when we catch that, of course, that's the magic moment where we have choice. What do I need right now? Is it time for 3 conscious breaths? Do I need to move away? Do I need to create some time out or some space, go to the toilet? Do I need to give myself some compassion? Is it time for a quick come into your senses? What is it that's going to help me lower my reactivity right now? We do that little practice of coming to your senses because meditation, mindfulness really helps us lower our reactivity. After only 8 weeks of a 20 to 30-minute meditation, grey matter in the brain associated with stress management, emotional regulation, and memory recall thickens, and stress hormones and inflammation is reduced. 8 weeks, 20 to 30 minutes. You might only start by 2 minutes. You might only start with that little coming to your senses. But if you can build that up, the benefits are huge. We often say if we could, if there was a pill that did the same thing, we'd all be taking it. So I'm wondering how you're receiving this information. I'm wondering how it's landing for you. And if you're having a reaction to it, So different mindsets might be things like, oh, great, there's things that I can do something about, or, oh no, is this another thing I have to do? Just be aware of how you actually hear the information and how you relate to it. Or is it somewhere in between? I'd love to hear from you. This is where we often come in with our self-talk around those words, should, ought, must. So I'm hearing this information. I know I really need to move more, or I know I really need to, pull back on the sugar. I really should meditate. That's one of mine. I really should meditate more, And again, if we think about that word should, we often say, stop shooting on yourself, because should is often someone else's version of you. It's often a voice from the past that we've internalized. And that voice from the past might be very, very well-meaning parents, grandparents, school teachers, the nuns, some authority figure who may have been very, very well-meaning when they told us all the things that we should, ought, must, have to do or not do. And we may have got told that repeatedly and repeatedly. And when we were quite young, we just internalized that. We took it in, and now we should on ourselves. Okay? So it can be useful to ask yourself that question. Whose voice is that? Who does that voice remind me of? How often am I giving myself these particular messages of things that I should do, things I should not do, I ought to, I must do? Because are they our voice? Probably not. Have we internalized it? Someone else's voice? Yes. And is it useful to us now? That's the big question. I mean, some of these shoulds, you might say, well, actually, I do want to take that on. I'm making a choice to do that. Take that on. But there's many of these things that, we may never have fully committed to. So no wonder we're not doing them. But if there's some things that you have heard today that really resonates with your own common sense and your own understanding, and that you'd like to incorporate a little bit more, then make an adult choice to do it rather than it be a should. Because the flip side of should is what? Often, when we don't do that thing, we might feel guilty. We might even start to feel ashamed, which is quite toxic. Guilt is I've done the wrong thing, or I've slipped up again. It's kind of behavioural, whereas shame's about who I am. I'm hopeless. I've tried to commit to this 20 times, and I still can't do it. I'm hopeless. So that becomes about who we are. Not helpful. Not helpful. So what if we were to bring a more compassionate voice in, and where we realise that, we're doing the best we can. under often really difficult circumstances because we lead busy lives. And how can I get on my own side here? How can I make it easier to incorporate some of these things into my daily routine? And again, that's perhaps not so much all the things that I should or must do. What could I just add in? And how can I make it virtually no fail by keeping it small, keeping it really small, and making it achievable? What would that be like? Could you take a more flexible approach? We're talking about flexibility. This is just information. What would I like to do more of? What am I drawn to? What am I prepared to incorporate? What am I prepared to incorporate? How much time am I prepared to dedicate to it? What am I prepared to just try out? Give it a go. What might my priority be? Can you see how asking yourself those more flexible, enabling questions have a different energy around them than the should, ought, must, have to, where, the flip side's guilt, right? Not particularly helpful. Start small. Start really small. Don't try and do everything, but be consistent. And perhaps enlist some support. Support can come in various forms. It might be a buddy. I thought that I might try and, get a little bit more exercise or movement in. What would you think about coming with me a couple of times a week for a 30-minute walk? We've talked 3 times to your friend. We've talked, 3 times about joining that yoga class. Why don't we go next week and give it a go? What would you think? A buddy can also be someone that they might not do the activity with you, but they might agree to be like, a little coach and help celebrate your successes. So when you've gone for the walk, when you've gone to the end of the road, when you've collected the mail from the mailbox, if you've, done a few little seated exercises, whatever it is, what about you ring your friend and you tell them? What about you send your friend a little emoji, a little thumbs up, and say, yeah, I've done it. And they'll send you a little thumbs up back. Celebrate your successes. Support can also be things like online support. If, say, for example, lack of socializing, you realise that's an issue, there are 1,001 activities that can be done online, but you can also research online for meetup groups. You can meet up to do anything. There's book clubs, movie clubs, going to listen to music. It's not necessarily meet up to find a partner. It's just about people who are trying to connect through an activity. Sometimes if you have disconnected, sometimes you need some help with reconnection. That might be through a support group. It might be through an organisation, for blokes such as the Men's Shed, where you do an activity, but you're connecting at the same time. Women, young mums, friendships, lifelong friendships have been developed through mothers' groups, after babies are born. So what is it that you could make your priority, and what are you prepared to commit to? I'm just actually checking the comments you've made. Yeah. So a few comments here. Respond rather than react. That's a helpful strategy. Yep, Maria, we talk about that at Quest as absolutely foundational. That awareness of when you're going into a reaction, and often we get familiar with that through the sensations in the body. My breathing's starting to speed up, my heart's racing, my muscles are tense, ready for action, or I've gone into a brain freeze. I'm having a reaction. So that awareness is the first step. We don't always catch it. We're human. Our reactions happen in less than a blink of an eye. So we don't always catch it. But practicing awareness is the key, and then once we're aware, we can choose, right, what would I need right now? And responding does give you more control, absolutely. I think most of us don't feel great when we've had a big reaction. I mean, sometimes it's necessary, but most of us, don't. We might feel a certain relief that we release some energy perhaps, but most of us don't feel great afterwards. And yeah, one of the best things I ever learned was to stop shooting on myself and others. Almost never use it now. It's a loaded word. You're so right. And I absolutely applaud you. My awareness was increased when I first came to Quest about should and shoulding. And I don't should on myself quite so often anymore. I haven't completely cut it out, but, virtually. But I then realized how much I shoulded on other people. That I was, I'm great actually at, thinking or telling other people what they should do, what they must do, what they ought to do. Or one of my favorites, I think, is you need to. Okay? So once I kind of stopped shooting on myself, I then became much more aware about just in everyday language how much I did that to others. And I'm working on that now. It's a work in progress, as we all are. So as we're coming to the end, I'd like to leave a little bit of time just for us to finish off doing another little come into your senses, another little meditation practice. And I hope you've enjoyed the content of today. I have. I always like to do a little bit of a summary at the end because it helps me get things into my long-term memory. We started off talking about the research from Rudolph Tansey, who was talking about 4 habits that influence our brain health. And those 4 habits: too much sitting, lack of socializing, inadequate sleep, and chronic stress. We then looked at how and why these things influence our brain health in particular. And we looked at ways in which we might be able to change that, or where are the areas that we have most influence over. And one of the things I forgot to mention was, as well as an online program that talks about sleep, we also have an online program that talks about anxiety. And of course, anxiety, anxiety is normal, but when anxiety becomes more chronic, or when it starts to interfere with your life, I mean, there is chronic stress just right there. So acute stress, fine, good. We need a little bit of stress to get up in the morning. But when it becomes chronic and when anxiety becomes chronic, that can affect everything, our level of functioning. We're talking about brain health today. So Quest also has an online program that deals with anxiety. So I think that would be really, really useful if anyone's got a particular issue around that. So I really loved our conversation today, and I hope to see you again online, perhaps at Home with Quest, which we do on a Wednesday morning at 11 a.m, on a Monday evening at 7. Patria does an online meditation group, and you're more than welcome to join that. And the next Quest Connect will be in a month's time, first Sunday of the month between 2 and 3. Apart from that, you're more than welcome to join us down at Quest for Life on a program. It would be lovely to meet with you and see you there. But let's just finish now by doing another little come to our senses. So again, you don't need to change anything. Just make sure you're comfortable. And let's just start by taking a couple of longer, slower breaths. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes or lower your gaze. And just have a sense of breathing out all that information that you've just heard. Not needing to do anything with the information. Just letting it go now. Trust that it'll be there when you need it. Just become aware of your sense of touch. Anything that your hands are touching. Maybe notice texture of your clothing. Maybe become aware of the temperature that your clothing creates, or the movement of clothing as you breathe. Becoming aware now of the field of sensations in the mouth. Any remaining tastes in the mouth. That last cup of tea or coffee. Any aromas in the air, anything you can smell. And as we do this little practice, thoughts will come. It's okay. It's no problem. They can be there. But just let them pass through the field of your awareness. And if you notice you've got caught up in thinking, that's okay. Just bring your mind back and focus your attention now on anything you can see, even if your eyes are closed. Not trying to see, just notice what's already there. Because there's nothing you need to do right now. Nowhere else you have to be. Just give yourself this moment. And then take your awareness to anything you can hear. Just a sense of receiving the sound, letting the sound come to you. Not needing to label the sound or think about the sound. It's just, well, sound. Maybe you can follow one sound, then let it go. And then maybe you can find another sound. And then back to your breath. Perhaps just following one breath. And then when you're ready, just come back into the room. When I mentioned sound, there's a very large dog that lives opposite me. I don't know what he is really, but he's huge and he's like a big sheepdog. He's like, the Dulux dog that used to be in the ads. And I swear to you, this dog gets its coat washed many more times than I think I've ever washed my hair in my whole life. And the people who come around and do it, they have this hair dryer, I guess it is, and it absolutely is so loud. It must be really powerful because it's a very big, thick dog. So when I said sound, that was the first thing that came on, and you register that slight sense of, oh, that shouldn't be happening, like I want it to be quiet. But then I just meditated on the sound. I just let my attention go to that sound and I stayed with it until after a while I didn't really notice it. It's amazing, isn't it, what the mind does? So it's been lovely talking to you about some habits that can influence our brain health. So I wish you all a lovely day and I wish you all happy brains. And I'll see you next time. Okay, bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you.